Hello, all you English teachers in Italy. This is a video that is specifically for teachers who are teaching children in Italy. I suppose anywhere from ages, I teach 3 and up, but even before that, I suppose this works. And about to 11 or 12, because at that point things change and you do sort of different styles. Let me see. The first thing that I wanted to mention was different books that you can use. Typically, the books that they use in the schools are not very good, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of times in our region, they're starting to use more books that are published by English publishers and not by Italian publishers. But you'll find a lot of times if you can get your Italian students English books that they're written by Italians, and the ones that are written by Italians are incredibly bad. I mean, like really, really poor English. It's incredible how bad they are. But as I say, some of them are starting to use English publishers now. Even with English publishers, I find if you have a choice, if you're a teacher who has a choice, I would say go for Oxford University Press children's books. Just because that's my personal preference. I don't know all the publishers out there, but as far as kids' books are concerned, if I have a choice between Oxford and Eli, which is another popular publisher here, at least that British Institute uses, I prefer Oxford, mostly because Eli sometimes puts their instructions in Italian, and that really frustrates me because my students are preparing for exams and certification, and the instructions are not in Italian on an English certification exam. And so they get to the instructions on the exam and they have no idea what they say because they're not used to seeing the word match or circle in English. They're not used to it. English instructions. So I prefer Oxford because as far as I know, all of their stuff is completely in English. I use Incredible English? Yeah. I use Incredible English for all my students if I can. They have several other things like Happy Earth. I think they used to have Happy Friends, but that's gone now. But generally, I'm happy with all their materials. I think they're all pretty good. As I say, Eli also, another reason I don't prefer Eli is because they have typos a lot, and they have things that are not quite right, and maybe they're written by people who've been in Italy for a really long time, and they're just making mistakes without thinking about it. But I just feel like their editors should be on top of things. My husband is teaching out of a book of theirs called Exam Buster, and parts of it are written by an Italian who speaks English, and it's really obvious because they'll have articles written and nothing is natural about it. And I find that to be a huge problem if your editors are not even checking that your English is natural. I just don't really have much respect for that as a book company. And we proofread for an Italian company that has some English textbooks, and it's really hard getting Italians to accept this idea that English is defined by English people and not by what Italians find is like awkward English that makes more sense for Italians. And it's really hard to get people past this idea that English can change for them and it could be easier for them. I mean, it's quite frankly just wrong if you get awkward language, and I just don't really have much respect for a company that isn't interested in getting the right English. So anyways, that's why I prefer Oxford. I've never had any problems with an Oxford book. Not to say that there aren't any problems, maybe there are, but I've not had any problems yet, especially with the kids' books. I also think that they follow more the structure that British Institutes does a lot more testing for kids. than Cambridge does or Trinity does. They have a test for every year, basically, so that your kids can be certified every year. And I find that the Oxford books follow that more closely than the Eli books. The Eli books leave off a lot of topics that the kids are supposed to be covering, like health. They don't cover the health that they should be covering, and there's different things. But I find that Oxford generally does at least cover the majority of the vocabulary that the kids are supposed to know for our tests. So that's another reason why I prefer it. Okay, if by any chance you are at a school that does contracts, a private school that does contracts to a school, which is the case with me, I'm at British Institutes, and they send me out to different schools. At the moment, I'm teaching at a preschool, or well, different preschools. I have about anywhere from 20-25 kids, but you know what preschools are like. Sometimes kids are gone. You might be teaching 15 kids, 11 kids, whatever. Because when they're sick, they're all sick, right? Concerning in schools, if you're a new teacher, which is the case, I think, with a lot of English teachers in another country, because they're doing it sort of like a, let's just see how this works out. It'll be a little adventure thing. If you're new to teaching and your school sends you into a school and you have no experience with large classes, no experience with Italian large classes, I would strongly suggest that you insist that there is a teacher with you. That way you can learn how they teach in Italy, because it is not the English way, quite frankly. They are and they might seem at first very harsh to you, because they yell at the kids. Almost all the teachers yell at the kids to control their classrooms. That's what they do for discipline. What else? Sometimes they separate the kids. Sometimes they put them outside the door where the caretaker will come along and say, what were you doing wrong, sort of thing. Whether you like it or not, I would just say, you don't go to somebody's house and tell them how they should be parenting their kids. And I would almost say, it's slightly the same thing with the Italian system. Just give it some time to get used to it. If you have a really big problem with yelling at kids, it's going to be hard for you at first to listen to another teacher yelling at the kids, because it's going to feel like it's too much or something. But if you're teaching kids, Italian kids that are over 6 or 7, and you do not have a teacher in the classroom with you, they will run all over you, because they are used to that style of discipline. They are used to a teacher yelling at them when it's slightly serious but not so serious. And then they're used to being moved around if it's more serious, and they're used to teachers making notes if it's uber serious. You have to sort of learn their system, and you have to know how to discipline the way that they discipline. And I'm not saying that you have to do it the way they do it, but I think it's good to know that that's what the kids respond to, because that's what they know, that's what they've been taught, that's what, whatever. So if you're new, I really strongly suggest that you insist that there's a teacher in the classroom with you, because otherwise your kids will be completely rowdy. You will not be able to control them if you're new, because new teachers often lack a lot of confidence that they need to discipline. I mean, maybe if you've been babysitting all your life or you've been a nanny, but it's different with 1 or 2 kids than it is with 25 kids, and trying to keep them quiet enough to teach them. And quite frankly, if you can't discipline your kids, you can't teach them anything. A lot of teaching is not teaching. A lot of teaching is just discipline and keeping the kids focused and keeping their attention. And you can't always be bouncy and happy and fun if you also have to be the person keeping control. So anyways, if you're new, get a teacher in the room with you so you can learn how it works and you can see what they do and everything. It's a good idea. Just a couple ideas. If you're just like, what do I do with these kids? I don't know. They haven't given me any materials. Especially if you're doing preschool, obviously they can't read yet, so you're not gonna be able to do a lot of things with them. I go into a school and I have teachers tell me that I cannot do worksheets with the kids because they'll do worksheets when I'm not there. Which at the beginning I thought, holy crap, what am I supposed to do? I've got an hour in front of these kids. Well, I'm just supposed to talk to them and teach them vocabulary for 40 hours worth of lessons here. But actually, it's really good when they do that because when you're not there and the teachers are teaching them as well, the kids get great at English. So anyways, games to do with little tiny ones that are good. If you can get your hands on some bingo games, that's great. This is 3 to 5 year olds, the ones that can't read yet. And even beyond that, obviously, but if you're just desperate for ideas, flashcards are always good. I do mostly vocabulary with those little ones, and I also try to do really short phrases just to get them in their minds, like, do you like this food or whatever? Do you like chicken? And getting them to say, yes, I do. And are you happy? Yes, I am. Because those are structures that Italians don't teach. And I know that what's going to happen next year, they're going to go and somebody is going to teach them, yes, I like. Because they're told that it's that mi piace is I like, and so they always leave off the object. But and I figure, well, they're going to be taught wrong anyway, so we'll just try to get it in their head so that when they're taught right later on, it will be there already, and it will be easier for them to grab onto. Other than that, flashcards, little tiny phrases, bingo is great. I do team games with them, which is sadly Italians don't do a lot of extracurricular activities or sports and things, so they're not used to being on teams. They're not used to I don't know. We have a system for things, and we do lots of extracurricular activities, and we think all these ideas and whatever are great, and being creative is great, but that's not quite the Italian way yet. It's very traditional style, depending on where you're at, really. Where I'm at now, they pretty much take on anything, so they're way more open to, like English ideas and games and such. But you do get places where they're like, just have the kids sit and write for an hour. That's what we do. Which, if it works, it works. I don't know if it works or if it doesn't work. It's too hard for me to judge how educated the Italian students are in Italian. So, anyways, I also do song games, like London Bridge is really good. Kids love London Bridge is Falling Down. If you can find, there's a YouTube version of it that has loads of verses and it will last a long time. Kids love that, and it can go for about 10 minutes if you stretch it. And they always want to do it 2 or 3 times at least. So those are a few ideas, but I haven't been teaching kids long enough to have billions and billions of ideas. There are billions of ideas, though, online that you can find. The problem is finding things that work for you. And you'll find a lot of times that those things will just come to you as you're teaching. The best ideas just hit you while in the middle of class sometimes, and you just grab something and find out, oh, this works with the kids, great. And you build on that. So don't put too much. If you find loads of things online and people going on about how great stuff is, well, it might be great for them, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And it doesn't mean it's going to work for your kids. So just work with what you've got. Try to get to know the kids that you've got and see what you can do. Every year is going to be different as well. Kids are going to change as they go on with you. They're going to get better. It's going to get easier, etc. So. Also, there is, especially in our region, there's this obsession about English and parents wanting their kids to get English and thinking it's uber important for them, etc. Which is great, and it means that you should, if you're in a business, you should be teaching a lot of kids because they're the best students. Their parents are not going to let them miss lessons very often. And they're, whatever, their parents are going to take it seriously, so they're going to force their kids to come. Having said that, if you get into some sort of babysitting position or like English nanny-ish sort of thing, I would not suggest that for any child that is 5 or older, because I think it's about age 5 where kids are so dependent on their language that they will start you will go through at least a period of them resisting you talking to them in English. And I teach all in English. I do not use Italian. If I do use Italian, I write it on the board. I never ever say Italian in my class. And you know, different teachers do things differently. I did that because when I came here I didn't have any English, and because my husband had experience teaching English, but he taught in London, where of course you don't use the language because you've got like three languages in one class. You have to use English, just only English. So I teach all in English, and you do get kids resisting it because they're so fixed in their language. If you are babysitting or working with a kid who is under 5, you will not get that resistance. And I don't think they'll ever go through a period of resistance if you catch them before that, which means there are great opportunities if you're looking for extra work to do English babysitting or being a nanny, etc. However, if you're working with a kid, you have to let the parents know that it takes a lot of time. A lot of parents want results. They want something now. They want their kids to talk to them in English now. And quite frankly, their kid is never going to talk to them in English because it's not necessary. So if you're teaching a kid and then they're outside of class or they're outside of the environment that they're used to with you, they will get embarrassed. They'll get shy. They won't want to use English around their parents. It happens all the time, and parents are like, why aren't my kids speaking in English? Why aren't they, doing all these things? Why won't they tell me this? But they'll do it with you. And I think you have to just, tell the parents to be patient, try to get them to calm down and everything. And, if you could somehow make a video or something of your work with them or give them some sort of idea where they're at. Because Italian parents, I had an English Italian recently tell me, she said, Italian parents are on the kids. They are, completely involved in every little detail of their life. They have to know everything that's going on, etc. And it's the same with English. They want to know everything that is happening, and they want results right now. So I think you should be really upfront with them and say, it's going to take a few years. How long does it take for a regular child to start speaking English? A year or two, but that's when they're really young. If they're a little bit older and just learning it, it's going to take a little bit longer. So, maybe a year or two. And even then, they're just going to be speaking it with you. They're not going to be speaking it with their parents. Why would they? So, anyways, those are just some things to think about. If you're teaching kids, there's loads of things to think about if you're teaching kids, but those are just some ideas. Thanks. Bye.